Thanks so much for being here. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Kind of a special little treat. I don't get to see either of you as much as I'd like. Where does the race go from here?
Well, there's 55 days, and it is a sprint. It is not a marathon. I think if Joe Biden had still been in the race, we would be talking about a marathon, maybe in some ways a drag. And I think every single moment counts, from the moment that Kamala Harris left her after party last night from the debate that she clearly won. She is back on official duties for 9/11 commemorations in New York, in Pennsylvania, and then back to D.C. So she's got a sprint for official duties as well as for campaign duties.
Gretchen, you posted on Instagram last night, quote, "I met Donald Trump the first time when I was competing for Miss America." No, he didn't own it. That was Miss USA. And subsequently, I interviewed him many times over the years. I met Vice President Kamala Harris for the first time when she was running for president. More recently, in 2022, when I was with President Biden as he signed the first bipartisan bill I championed into law having to do with NDAs. You know both of them. What did you think last night? What do you think happened?
Well, I think from a big picture point of view that Donald Trump made a lot of mistakes with regard to only placating to his MAGA base. We all know that independents and undecideds are going to basically decide this election, so that was a mistake in my mind. But for Kamala Harris, look, there was a lot of talk about whether or not she would command the stage, whether or not she would have leadership skills, even about her height. And as a short woman myself, I can relate to being underestimated from time to time. She came out on that stage, she reached for his hand, she wanted to shake it, and she introduced herself to him. And at that moment, that is when the power shifted to her. She was exquisitely prepared for this debate. And I think that this is a bigger message for a victory for women. I mean, take politics away from this for a moment. We're not talking today about whether or not Kamala Harris commanded that stage or whether or not she exhibited leadership skills. We're saying she won that debate. And we're now maybe closer to having a woman actually be the president of the United States. So we need to stop talking about women's height and whether or not they can lead and whether or not a woman can be president. We need to just go back to this debate and see how she performed.
Yeah, I don't understand the height thing, too. I saw some conservative women and conservative commentators on social media last night talking about how, I mean, who cares?
Who cares? It has nothing to do with your brain, right?
Well, I think what is really very frightening is they're still trying to find ways to say where she is deficient instead of looking at all the many deficiencies. The fact that Kamala Harris's bar for competition yesterday was very different than Donald Trump's, as it always is. He could get up there and spew lies from what people eat for dinner to what his accomplishments were in the White House to him firing very bad people. And she has to go up, command the stage, get to know voters who still don't have a clear vision of who she is and what her vision is for the country, as well as talk about policy prescriptions in a digestible way for the American people to embrace them and understand it. The bar was sky high and she hurdled it. And she did it with the moderators not enforcing the rules against Donald Trump, but enforcing them against her.
I don't know that I don't know anything about that, but I do think in terms of the moderators, I do think it's interesting.
Jake, you know, you watched them let her. He jumped in just like I did with you just now. They turned the mic back on.
They also fact checked him
3 times.
Well, whatever it is, my only point is I think they probably by the rules had to give him more time because of that. But I don't. Let's just talk about Harris and Trump if we could. One of the things that I thought was interesting about the performance is like how often she baited him, and how often he took the bait.
We know this about Donald Trump, right? I mean, we know that that's how you get to him. Now, I'm sure his advisor said to him, don't
take the bait. She's going to mention John McCain. Don't take the bait.
But look, he could have insulted her much more than he did last night, right? I mean, if you watch his rallies, he's insulting her and calling her stupid, and she's not smart because she's a woman.
That's the nice stuff.
The
worst stuff is on Truth Social.
Exactly. Yeah. But he didn't drop to that level. He didn't look at her. He didn't want to shake her hand, and that was very disrespectful. But I think at least on that regard, he stayed somewhat in line. And with regard to having more talk time, look, if he had been talking about substantial policies, then maybe I would have a problem with the fact that he had 5 minutes more. But I think he just made a grave error about really not jumping on any policy talk whatsoever.
You know, he did. Sorry, Jay, one second. I would say where he also made an error is he never looked at her and never said her name.
Right.
He called her her, she, and her boss. He never referenced Kamala Harris, Madam Vice President Harris, Kamala, nothing. He only said her and she,
which was she dominated him. Back to my original point, she dominated him last night more than anyone else has in a decade.
Yeah, why do you
And
think
that
that
is the biggest thing that will get under his skin.
Well, Hillary Clinton did she did a good job against Donald Trump too, and still ended up losing the election. But why do you think that she was able to do such a good job last night? She is not as experienced on the debate stage as he is.
But she's a prosecutor.
You think that's what it is?
Yes,
Yeah.
and as I said before, she was superbly prepared for this. It was very obvious that, and sometimes she was too scripted. I mean, let's just call a spade there. But, I don't think he prepared much at all. In fact, he bragged about the fact that he wasn't going to prepare. And when you go into something like this, I don't care who you are, preparation shows.
Do you think that she needs to do more to mix it up with voters? Congressman Clyburn was on the show earlier, and he said he'd love to see her talking to voters at town halls and more talking directly to people, real people, not like me. I'm not a real person. About issues that they care about. Do you want to see that as a supporter?
I absolutely do, and as a friend. And I will say, to me, Kamala Harris's sweet spot are those one-on-one conversations and the small groups. The reason for that is she is not afraid of sitting with a team of rivals. She's not afraid of sitting with people with different points of view, and she's reasonable. She can hear your perspective and even figure out how to integrate that into some of her policy positions in her platform. I've seen her do it multiple times on justice reform, talking about abortion, talking about immigration reform. That is where she is remarkably skilled, and I think it's not just that she's a prosecutor, she's also a very skilled legislator.
I agree with that 100%. However, I'm not sure I would recommend to her, if I were advising her to do another debate, because the bar was so high for her last night and she excelled, that I think she could only do as well or not as well, and Trump could only do better. But I agree. I
think she should do another debate.
I think she should absolutely do another debate.
I think more media interviews to get into the meat of the policy.
But I think she should do more debates. She should absolutely do more media interviews, and she should do a lot more roundtables. She's killing it at the rallies, but people need to see her more.